Welcome, Kayira. We are live on 75 W Radio. We are live on Ummah Connected. We are live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Zoom. Tonight, we are talking about parenting in the diaspora. While parenting is difficult as it is even much more difficult with our situations in the diaspora. Tonight, we shall just be trying to see what's happened. How have you managed to cope? The last 20 years for many have been years of sort of fighting to get through papers, get your right to live in the United Kingdom and so on. But then later on, as we settled, of course, children come in and the whole process of parenting starts. Of course, the next 20 years are most likely going to be even much more hard work in terms of parenting, given the changing dynamics in the world at the moment. Of course, our unique situation is coming from where we come from, having the sort of upbringing that we got when we were brought up. Imagine that now we find ourselves in a situation where we have to fight between two cultures, a sort of a clash of cultures. The culture where you are taken to your Senga, to your Jeja and brought up there, and then the culture that we have had to bring our children up in. Of course, even for the children, it's a serious confusion. Some parents have taken a step further, decided to swallow the pride, to swallow the pin, take the pill, and send their children back home, back in Africa, wherever you come from in Africa, and deciding sometimes to take them to boarding schools where you hope, in the hope and the expectation that they would get much better upbringing. Of course, we've had that with the varying success because some people have benefited from that. Some have had actually worse outcomes out of that. But in general, many of the children that have had an opportunity to travel and go away back home, many of them at least have had a few things at least that they have learned. One, yes, their language is there, but two, and importantly, respect for education, for adults, respect for the things that they get and not taking them for granted, because then they realized how much people have to work so hard to get what they get. In here, we are fighting our own battles. In some homes, there are particular things that will work in some homes and not work in others. How is it that some things can work in some homes and not work in others? Are there any general things that probably themes that we can pick upon and sort of use them as a way to sort of inform our own ways of bringing up children? There are times you bring up your own children and you think you're doing well until you visit somebody's home. And then suddenly you realize you have to keep apologizing for your children's behavior. Or sometimes you have visited and you're very strict with your own children. You take your children to this particular home and the home is broken down in terms of, the way they view all these things. As a result, of course, what that means is then probably you look at your own self and you think, I have done better. But could it be that your children are feeling guilty because these other children can get away with a lot, which they cannot get away with? It's a balancing game. And for parents, of course, we definitely have to keep fighting. You do the best that you can do, and then you put your trust in your Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'd like us to play just this clip to get us thinking. And while we prepare our minds, just to have the conversation that is going to be tonight's conversation. Isma, whenever you're ready, please, let's have that clip. If you've just joined us, the program is Come Let's Talk with me, Kassim Kayira, 22 minutes past 8 o'clock on a Tuesday, where we are talking parenting in the diaspora, which is a unique trait in its own self. Isma, whenever you're ready, please, let's just roll with that clip and inshallah, that should get us talking. Of course, if you've only joined us tonight, this program is a program that is very interactive. It's about you. It's not about me. It's about us having a conversation about how we can make our own situations better. No topic is out of discussion. The only difference is we do it decently. Isma, ready when you are.
My name is Tinuke Fawole, and I welcome you to the Parenting in Diaspora Forum. So basically, we're going to be talking about parenting in general, parenting period. If you have children, whether they're young, they're older, whatever, just issues with parenting, we'll be talking about those. And then parenting in diaspora, which is a class of its own. So for those of us that have moved from our original countries and are living in other countries, for instance, if someone came from Mexico to begin to live in the United States and raise their children there, they'll be living in the diaspora. And if someone left Kenya to go to the United Kingdom to raise their children, they will be living in the diaspora. So I think you will agree with me that parenting is one of the most important jobs in the world. And it is at the same time one of the most difficult jobs, because for most things that you do, when you put in your 200%, you can be sure that at least you get a great reward. Unfortunately, it's not so with parenting. You may do all the best that you know that you can do, and sometimes the results are not the same. So this will be a forum to share ideas. It will be interactive. We'll bring our comments, our questions, and we'll just see how we can do this better, because it really makes a big difference, the way we do it, because of how important it is. So talking about parenting in diaspora, this presents a lot of opportunities which a lot of our children are taking advantage of. There are so many opportunities that they have academically, professionally, in all areas of their lives. However, there are also challenges. And even though we don't have as many children with challenges as we have those that are using the opportunities, it is still very serious and is one too many. And sometimes the problems actually are due to the situation of being raised in the diaspora. For instance, I'm originally from Nigeria, and I spent more than 2 decades in Nigeria before I came here. So obviously, in my home, I raised my children the Nigerian way. But the moment my children stepped out of the house, they deal with another culture. For instance, I taught my children, because that's my culture, you don't give me something with your left hand. They get to school, they see everyone giving the teacher things with their left hand. And, I'm sure they wonder sometimes, is this way I do the right or to the left? I mean, it's a big deal for children to have to deal with all of that. And, some of my Japanese friends tell me that in their culture, when you look down, it's a sign of respect. But in America, if someone is talking to you and you look down, it looks like you're guilty of something. So the children have to deal with that too. How do they really remember from time to time which is what? So they are facing these two cultures. They are in it, and it's a problem. So in my job as a criminal law attorney, child welfare advocate, I face this every day because I work in a county that's very diverse. So I deal with parents who don't speak English. And so that causes a lot of problem between them and their children, even though most of the time their children speak their original language. But then there's just a disconnect. Their parents tell them things, but once their friends come, parents complain that children just ignore them and all of this. And they really don't, because the parents don't speak English, that also affects the way they've been able to assimilate into the American culture. And so their children feel this way about things, and the parents feel completely differently. Children want to do certain things, and parents don't understand. And then I deal with parents like from Africa who tell me, can you please tell the judge to send this child back? I know my brother is in Nigeria or Kenya or whatever, and they'll take care of this child, and the child will do better than being here. Can you please do that? So parents are frustrated. And then I deal with the children too, who also have their own issues, who say, I just don't understand why my dad won't sign me up for soccer classes, he won't sign me up for football, and I go to games, he doesn't go with me. All the other children have their dads with them, but my dad just has to walk all day long. Or I come home, I try to talk to my mom about the issues that I'm dealing with at school, and she says, what are you talking about? I give you food, I give you a place to live, what is your problem? So there's this disconnect, and it's coming to affect our children. And so this just became so much a burden on my heart. Anytime I went to work and I saw these scenarios, and I saw that, but for the fact that these children and their parents are living and thinking in two different cultures, they won't even be having this problem. And I come home every day and I talk to my husband about it all the time. And one day he just told me, so what are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do about it? And that question has bugged me for so long, and I kept thinking, so what can I do about it? So the only thing I thought about is, at least we'll start from here, start this dialogue, open this opportunity when we all can come together. We have been through that part too. We've raised 4 children in this country, in the United States, but this video is really for you, wherever you are in the world. We've raised 4 children who have become adults in the diaspora, and we faced some challenges also. We had to struggle through a lot of things, but I believe my husband and I still have some advantages over some other parents. So we have things that we can share. Other people that have been successful in this area have ideas that they can share with others so that we can help ourselves. And children who are being raised in the diaspora, this is for you. As a matter of fact, this is about you. So I want you also to be able to watch this channel, to have your comments, your questions about whatever issues you're facing, whatever disconnect you have with your children, with your parents, whatever it is that your parents are not getting, whatever you're trying to pass on to them. I'd like to invite you to this channel also. This is your channel. This is your avenue for you to be able to share your views. And this is what I have for you. So thank you so much for watching. And I'm hoping that
it was more of a promotion for Madam's website, which is also an effort towards parenting. Everybody's trying to find ways that they can contribute to this particular bigger debate that is ongoing. Every parenting is different. We're coming from different backgrounds. We are dealing with different situations in our own lives, in our own homes. And that can have a strong bearing on, what happens. Of course, the program is Come Let's Talk with me, Kassim, Kayira. We are 29, that's nearly about 8:30, and we are talking about parenting, especially the challenges that we face. They might not necessarily just be challenges, there might be opportunities as well. Being in the diaspora, the kind of access that we have to certain facilities that people might not have home. There's been an interesting conversation that has been going on in Uganda, especially. Looking at the education system, many of you, we go back home and you see what is happening there, especially in terms of, children having to wake up very early in the morning, be woken up at 5 o'clock to start preparing or readying them for going to school. They go in, they are doing preps, and then they spend the entire day in school. Then at the end of the day, come back and then still have preps for those who are in boarding school or have to do homework, a lot of homework back home. This is where the education came from. And you see the amount of time that goes in. Kids go to school, they start 9 o'clock, no hassle, then 3 o'clock they are done, they'll be home, enjoy, do probably an hour or so of homework, and then it's free for all. What is happening in the manner that, those are opportunities that we have here that people back home don't have. They have to work twice as hard. But I'd like to hear your own experiences. We have people who have, lived in the diaspora. This particular parent talks about having brought up 4 children in the diaspora. That's quite something. How have you managed to do it, if you managed to do it? Do you think probably there are lessons that we can pick from you, lessons that are crucial? Did you take a certain decision at a certain point in life to say, I'm sending my children to Africa, send them back home, let them start, get a chance to an opportunity to live the life, see what happens, be on the farms, be on the shambas, and help out. When they come back, has that changed them? Or some of them actually got worse? Well, of course, the conversation, the microphones are open. Why not we have just a conversation? What has been your style of parenting? And how effective do you think it has been? Assalamu alaikum. The conversation is open to you now, and we'll start as usual. The way this program works, we'll just come to you and we'll pick up on you and we'll share your experiences. It might be that we can learn from that, or maybe you might end up actually getting help from the people that are participating in the conversation. Mrs. Kasule, assalamu alaikum. Mrs. Kasule, are you there? Hello, Mrs. Kasule.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Thank you very much for joining the conversation tonight. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. I'm full of cold, but as you can probably hear, alhamdulillah, generally well.
Just a cup of tea, lemon, probably green tea with lemon.
And lots of ginger, absolutely.
May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring your health to bear. Now we are talking about parenting now. I presume by all means that you are a parent.
I am a mother of 4 beautiful girls, mashallah.
Oh, alhamdulillah. And what has the experience? How old are they?
I've got an 11-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 1-year-old.
That's heavy hands. That's heavy hands, definitely. And they're very, very, very close in age as well. That must be busy. How has it been for you, starting with the first one now? The 1 year now is just journey sort of beginning.
Yeah, we just sort of arrived last year. But with the first 3, we actually sent them back to Uganda.
Oh, okay.
with the first one when she was about 2 years old. And the second one, I think she must have been about a year. And they basically had most of their sort of childhood, early stages back home. They did attend kindergarten and the first few classes of primary right until when COVID hit. That's when we brought them back. So which was literally.
Were they in boarding school or?
No, they were in day schools.
Day school, yes. All right. And how did that help? Do you think it helped or did it affect their?
I think it did, definitely, because back then we always obviously had a discussion with my husband, and we thought it would be nice if they could go back home and get taught the culture, the language. So it did definitely help.
Did you feel not it's kind of a disconnect? They were away, that you missed them. How often would you talk to them, for example?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
I'm saying, how often did you speak to them while they were away?
Oh yeah, we used to communicate with them. Not every day, and we used to travel quite a lot as well. My husband and I, at least, I don't know, twice, thrice a year, and they would come over as well during their holidays. So, yeah.
Some people make the decision to take children to Africa. Well, partly there is the sort of learning culture and so on. But there's also the removing the burden, because as a family, you're trying to work so hard. Their being here becomes a bit of a burden, if I may use the word, and will reservedly using the word. But you send them out to Africa to allow you to get some room to get working. This was not your decision. It was more about their upbringing.
Yes, it was. It was.
What have you noticed that is different from them? I mean, comparing with the children that, for example, have been brought up here, how different are they in this particular experience that they had?
Well, they've only literally just come, but they just came back last year. So we are still settling in, if I may say. We are still settling in and trying to find out how others are different from our girls. But yeah,
how are they settling into the education system here now?
It is okay. I think my eldest, she said that most of the work she's just revising, because I think they were ahead back home. Yes. She's like, oh, it's so easy because we did this in like primary 5, primary 4, and she's in year 7 currently. Yeah.
So it seems very, very easy. That's the one thing actually they find, especially with maths. They get here and it's like a walk through the park. It's very. The maths that we do is very hard maths there, and then you come here and it's all just like smooth sailing.
It is, yeah.
That makes them much more competitive then, because that's the other aspect, that whenever children come from Africa, you realize they've come in because they've been in a very competitive environment. They get in and they almost want to continue with the competition, and then there's no one to compete with here.
Absolutely, and we've actually got a few awards because of that, especially my first daughter. She's really, really highly academic and highly competitive. So we have got lots of awards and things like that. I think the only thing that disturbed them a bit was the accent.
Oh, yes.
And they always thought, why are we speaking a bit different to them? And I thought, don't worry. At the end of the day, you do know English, you can speak it, so it's okay. You can communicate. It's perfectly fine.
Are they not feeling bored? Because part of the problem sometimes is that when you come in from a very competitive environment and then you get into very easy work, that can sometimes turn into a problem.
Yes, it can actually, and we found that to be a bit challenging. But then what we've tried to do is obviously to take them to the libraries. We have got tuition as well. Then they're doing the madrasa on top of it. So we are trying to keep them as entertained as we possibly can, because it's not that easy.
Oh, fantastic. Barakallah. Mrs. Kassim, it looks like it's the first time I've heard your voice on the show here, and it's good to have you as the first voice. And because I've got, since you've opened the channel taking children to Africa, I didn't know you had actually taken your children back home, which I think is opening up a very interesting aspect to it. It is difficult to maintain the interest of the young people, especially staying on a show like this for too long. So I asked my son to sort of come on the show because he went to Uganda. He was in Uganda for quite some time, for about a year or two. in boarding school. And I think since you mentioned that, I'd like to bring him on. Cheyenne, if you can unmute yourself, please just come on and share your experience of boarding school and going to Uganda, basically what you must have benefited. Mrs. Kasule, barakallahu fikum. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you for joining the conversation. I'm sure you've had the parent that has just come off Mrs. Kasule as you're logging in. And it's about, she decided to send her children up to 11 years old now, just come back and they were in Uganda, studying from Uganda, and it made a difference. So it would be good to hear from one who actually lived the experience. First of all, your own experience, when you were taken to boarding school, I'm sure it's a couple of years ago, but the memory is still fresh. Take me through that particular experience of going into boarding school. It was the first time you're getting there. How was it?
Yeah, obviously it was a frightening experience because you're left by yourself. But obviously we were with our siblings, but it's one of those things where you always have to depend basically on your siblings. No more mother time basically. But it's just one of those things basically where you basically just have to film it really. And it was I feel like it was a good time. We learned discipline. We went back to our African roots, I think. Yeah.
But there's always the Chiboko, which is spoken about. And so, Eddie Masab, I've seen your hand. I'll be coming to you once we've had Cheyenne on. Cheyenne, the Chiboko experience, everybody's always scared of Chiboko. How was that?
I feel like it's just one of those things that you have to go through the Chiboko, like as a person brought up in the UK, obviously you're not as disciplined as those in Africa, and I feel like you'd be stupid to not get Chiboko. Basically, you'd need that Chiboko. You'd need that Chiboko to just to basically just like firm you up, Yeah, so I feel like this Chiboko was definitely needed, 100%.
And Cheyenne, while you're still there, Sumaya is just asking what is today's topic. And Sumaya, just to respond to you, the topic is parenting in the diaspora. We're looking at the challenges and opportunities. So Cheyenne, looking at that particular experience that you had, you were not there for very long, but you managed to pick up a few things. What would you say were the good things that probably you benefited from that?
Yeah, 100% the discipline, like I think we learned the Quran, we learned our roots, we learned like where we actually came from. I think that's one of the best parts that we took from it. Also and also I heard the woman before talking about how the kids are well educated. I also think we did take education away. Like education was a big part. I feel like Uganda are more smarter than the people here. I feel like they're more stricter on rules and it's a good thing to go to Uganda.
So if you had any advice for a parent or for a young person that is getting taken to Africa, to Uganda to study from there, what sort of advice would you give them, given your personal experience and then what you know now?
I'd say just make the most of it. It's going to be one of those things where you're just not going to want to do it, but in the end, you'll see, obviously, I don't think kids look into the future, but obviously the parents do. And in the end, it will be so beneficial for you, basically.
Okay, do that. Any words then for parents? Because I remember we had an experience. You remember when I took you to boarding, what the experience was, Cheyenne? How I had to hide, how we ended up hiding, not to say goodbye to you as we were leaving. That was not a very nice experience for you.
Yeah, but now we laugh and we cry about it, so it's one of those things where it had to happen, I think, and maybe it was hard on you guys to see your children go. Maybe this was one of those things that were really hard on their parents, but I don't know what happened after. Obviously, I was left there, at the boarding school, but I don't know what happened after with the parents. But I think we learned how to adapt, and I think that's what the parents wish for, basically. I think
someone is asking in the chat room, Ismail Musoki is saying, Shayani, how was your relationship with the kids in boarding school?
Being from England, basically, we didn't know like a lot of Luganda, so it was like like the first like month was a bit rough because we didn't know anything these guys were saying and all this and that. Like you'd have people just talking to you in Luganda, and it's just so hard to even understand. But there was translators, like there was like your dormitory person who would know English, and they would just go to them and then translate it to you. So it wasn't that bad.
So if you are to go ahead and have your own life, considering now, inshallah, you'll be joining university soon, and then, well, maybe finish and have your own family, would you consider taking your children to Africa for the same experience that you went through? Do you think it would
Oh, 100%, 100%. Yeah, that's definitely happening. I can't lie. I need my children disciplined, and the only way that's ever gonna happen is Uganda. Your national country, basically. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Shayan. And you can continue listening into the conversation, because I'm sure there will be reactions to what you've just been saying. If you've just joined us, the program is Come Let's Talk with me, Kassim Kayira. We are live on 75 RABI Radio. We are live on Ummah Connected. It's 44 minutes past 8 o'clock, and we are talking parenting in the diaspora, the challenges and opportunities. So, Eddie Masaba, your hand was up at a certain point, so I'll come straight to you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thanks for joining the conversation. Hello, Soed. You can unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hello, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yes. Are you at work? Your video is not on.
No. Thank you for giving me this chance again. Unfortunately, I missed you last week, but this is a very
hospital. If you didn't know, I was admitted in hospital with the serious malaria bout. But alhamdulillah, that's the story that you missed while we were doing the introductions. Yes.
I'm sorry to hear that. Anyway, straight to the point, to the topic. This is a very interesting topic. I'm not a parent in the UK, but I've got nephews, I've got nieces here in the UK. I babysit them sometimes. I've got sisters here with children. I opted to have my kids in Uganda. I've I should say deliberately, because I've been bringing them over here every summer holidays. So, but I deliberately chose to leave them there for now to get that foundation education, early child development in Uganda.
How old are they, if you don't mind?
I've got an 11-year-old, a 7-year-old, 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old at the moment. But they are all in Uganda at the moment. They go to the same school. I like the setup. I've got the ustads that do madrasa with them over the weekend at home. I've liked the approach they have still in Uganda, because I ask myself a question that some of us that are working or living in this country very comfortably, that is the system that nurtured us. Yeah, that's the same system we went through. Why should I today wake up and think Uganda is very bad with a bad education system? No, I said to myself, no, let them go through the baptism of fire, if I may call it, the tanuru, if that is the word.
Yes.
Then when they come here, they will have two worlds to compare from. Yeah, they'll have both worlds. They will have a second home. I've worked with the prevention services in the past. I've visited prisons. I've seen children, especially from the minority background. And when I sat down with some of these kids to talk to them, the stories were heartbreaking. I sit on a children's safeguarding board in one of the councils. I work with children's services. I've seen some of the referrals that come through, and then we look how parents, especially from the African setting, how they lose kids to the social services. It's appalling. It's so shocking. And these are some of the reasons that have made me, that have driven me to stick to my decision. I've had pressures from so many people saying, how do you stick the kids in Uganda? Why do you leave? You're just avoiding responsibility. But deep inside my heart, I know I love them more than anything else. Keeping them in there, it's one way in which I think I'm protecting them, because I have a feeling the situation or the environment here is not very conducive, especially for some of us.
Now, so the part of the problem has been the manner in which children are taken say a decision, because actually I'm seeing so far the discussion seems to be twisted on the path of, you know, the people who made the decision to take children back to Africa. But I'm sure now we are going to be getting experiences, especially from people like Hajat Farida, who have seen join us, or even Hajat Sar, who have raised their children in the diaspora, to sort of see how they managed to do it.
No,
now, the problem
I'm still coming. I was going
to say to you, Soed, if you look at the manner in which we children have been sent to Africa, if they are sent in a manner where it is really putting their education, you know, putting their interests at heart, or with their best interests ahead, probably it wouldn't be a problem. But some children see it as a punishment, and some parents actually use it as a punishment. I'll take you to Uganda. You're becoming difficult, I'll take you to Uganda. So instead of really becoming an element of the person, it looks like a punishment.
I was actually stopping someone last week from telling the children that kind of phrases. I was actually, because every time she was telling the child, I'll take you back to Uganda. And I'm like, no, this is how you demonize Uganda. This is how you make them think Uganda is hell. No, you cannot keep using Uganda as a disarmament tool for a deterrent tool.
So someone has asked you a question in the chat room. When do you plan to bring your children back? Now that
when I feel it's very comfortable, because this is a decision I entered with their mom. We have talked over it. They've been here. They know. They've seen the system. I've brought them here. They've sat with the kids here of the same age, and we have seen the reasoning. They may be lagging behind in things like computers, but yes, with computers here, the kids are much better. But as things go on, I know they will get there. I've been in hospital. I was treated, the last time I was admitted in the hospital, I was treated by a doctor who was coming from somewhere in South Asia. I could hardly speak clear English, but he was a consultant.
Yes.
He was a consultant. So best thing on that, I have no regrets of keeping the kids over there. Alhamdulillah, with the help of Allah, I make dua. I keep making the duas for Allah to guide them. And I'm not saying that people who have kids here have made a mistake. No, everybody, they've got their own chance, and I encourage them to have their kids. But unfortunately, I couldn't have them here at the tender. Thank you so much.
Wait, so it looks like before you go, there might be a question for you from Zena Bega. I see the hand is up. She's all the way in the United States of America. Yeah. Zena, assalamu alaikum, and thank you for being part of the conversation tonight.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Am I audible?
Very audible. Yes. Is that a question to Soed, or you're making your own?
It's actually a general question. Having grown up in Uganda, and I went to boarding school while both my parents were in the diaspora, growing up with money-thirst relatives of my parents, I mean, I came to United States when I was about 20. And I don't know what's your view, you guys that are in the diaspora that just take your kids to live with your relatives in Uganda, and they become like like the source of income for your relatives. And forget about that. There's a time that I'm gonna say something very personal. I grew up both my parents were outside of the country. My dad in Tanzania, my mom in UK, United States, and the relatives always drained. I mean, they would drain the funds, and they never reached me. I don't know if you get what I'm saying.
No,
I don't know how confident you are in the diaspora, because I've seen that firsthand myself, whereby I didn't have the necessities that I needed, while my parents thought that I was being taken care of. You get what I mean?
Yes.
So you might, even if you give your kid to your mother, I mean, I think Uganda has gotten to a point where it's like that, whereby if you're not the parent yourself supervising your kids, I'm quite sure they're going to be deprived of some things. If I didn't have even a dictionary, I'm telling you this because my parents were outside of the country and they keep sending money. But the thing is, I don't think it's with all relatives, but how sure are you that your kids are being given what the necessities they need? You're working so much for your kids, but they might not be getting the simple things that they might need. And I don't know, I'm not judging or anything, but having been there, I'm not for taking my child anywhere close to Africa without my presence. Just that's my opinion.
So would boarding school help? So wait, speak to Zena.
Sorry. And that is where we go wrong. That is where we go wrong. It's all about pampering kids. It's all about thinking, my child. Yeah, it costs nothing. Okay, for those who have relatives or parents back home that end up eating from the children, what is meant for them, it's very unfortunate, and we don't encourage that. However, the kids, if it is 10,000, let's assume for argument's sake, let's assume if you send £200 and then whoever is babysitting, whoever is looking after a child takes £20 out of that. Instead, they deliver 150. It costs nothing, honestly. It's your relative. Because your aim there is not about the money. It's not about the kid living posh life there. It's about you're trying to mitigate a situation. You want them to stay in school, probably gain some skills from Uganda that can be brought back here so that when they come here, they are a better person. It's not because we are missing a point here. There are parents who think it's all about suffering in Uganda, and that's not the case. That's please. Me, I remember when I was growing up, my dad took me to an Islamic school. Yeah. And one of the debates they had with my mom was, Ogenda kono no mwana wanga, agenda kufire yenjala. Because the first primary school they took me was Kawempe Primary School then. And the first week when mom came to visit us, they took us back to Mbale. They said, no. There's a lot of suffering here. Then they took us to another Islamic school. My dad this time said, no, I want my kids to go to an Islamic school. I want them to study. And if I'm to praise my dad for any gift that he has ever given me, was to take me to an Islamic school. Today is when I appreciate. It was that Islamic school where there was suffering, where everybody thought that we were suffering, but it made us a better person.
Well, I can see several hands up, and I'll try to sort of open up the discussion.
I'm sorry, I get personal about this. But if you have a female child, I mean, I don't mind boys, and I don't know even to boys that's happening now as well. I would be very careful because you're not there. I mean, I know bad things happen here too, but I've seen firsthand. I mean, this has been happening when I was growing up. I mean, in boarding school, like you say, you just take them to boarding school. Things are happening to your kids, especially girl kids. But I don't know.
I don't think Soweto is in any way denying that. And you actually have a very valid point. I grew up in boarding school, almost from primary 3. I was in boarding school all the way to university. So the kind of experience that I would have, although my parents were not abroad as you as were, but there are these challenges that we face on a daily basis that need a lot of attention. Actually, parents now need to be a lot more cautious than it was before.
Yes,
they're not even safe with
your own relatives.
I beg your pardon. Yes, relatives.
They're not even safe with their own male relatives. To be open with you because I'm sorry, but this kind of thing, especially the girls, unfortunately, even the boys, that's happening now. I'm not saying I can protect my kid here, but at least they're not like a million thousand miles away where a kid can't tell me the truth. When I was growing up, I couldn't tell on my own aunt that, okay, this one pinched me here. As soon as I get off the phone from my mom, so they beat me up. Why did you say this? What do you think is going to happen? You can't monitor this child, and the child will never tell you the truth after that.
Then I can see several hands up. Let's just hear feeding into your conversation. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Stay there. Well, I think Joanne agrees with you. My children, my responsibility. I will never trade waking up to see them grow day in, day out for someone else to enjoy. Not where I am, they will be. So that is Joanne's decision. Swipe, and then I'll go to Hajat Sarah now. Swipe, you have the mic.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Everyone's situation is quite different and unique in its own way. I came to the UK in 2016, but back then I had come to do my studies. I had a family in Uganda, and I was coming to London. You understand, being in London and coming with a family then, it would have been quite expensive. So what we decided to do, me and my wife, I came over with her. We left our kids back in Uganda. And luckily our parents, both father and mother are there. So they used to do the child care at both sides. So later on during COVID, we had an opportunity to like, okay, now we have settled, the studies are over, and we could bring them over here. And luckily during my studies, the 3 years of study, I had the chance that I could go back to Uganda and spend time with them. So sometimes I would spend like three months in Uganda. So that gave me an opportunity to have time with them, as well as they're staying with their grandparents. But they were able to go to school. They were taking good care of them. So in that's a different, a unique situation. But I have my cousin in London. What she says is that she'll never forgive her parents, whether they left her in Uganda for so long, and they were away for most of her life. So it is important to understand what our children go through. Even me, who was away for probably 3 years or 4 years before they came over, but you'd sometimes talk to them and they're like, they would want us to be in their life all through. So when they came here, we asked one of them is, can we take you back to Uganda? What he said is, unless it's better if you are going back together as well. So at one time, they even asked me, why don't you come back and we stay in Uganda? Like, I don't have a job there. But you used to work at this place. What happened? So those are the kind of situations that they go through. But since they came here, it has been a challenge bringing them up. You know, you don't have the extended family that I had back then. And, you know, because in Uganda, they play football and then you would take them and they're all involved in the game at the same time. But now here it is, every child has their own schedule, different day. So you find that parenting in the UK is quite different than it is in Uganda. It's you and your wife, and then taking them to school, picking them up. But when it comes to Uganda, you have the extended family who can help you in so many
support network that comes handy there in that particular context.
Yeah.
Then, so looking at it, would you say you do not regret bringing them over?
Pardon?
Would you say you do not regret bringing them over? Let me just put it differently. Would you say, what has been the biggest challenge for you here, other than the extended family aspect? What has been the biggest challenge for you parenting from UK as opposed to parenting in Uganda, having lived in both places?
Here, they tend to question everything you tell them.
Yes.
And you know, in Uganda, we have, sometimes I have the big boy, he's now turning 14, and you would say, Gwe, mukole chino. And he's like, Ongamba nze, but you are saying us mukole chino. You know, like you want to gamba. Kayira, mukole chino, mwanike ngoye mukole chi, but he tells me, Racho gamba mukole chino gato gamba nze. You know? So they always question you. I don't regret bringing them over, but the issue why I brought them over is to give them an opportunity to stay here. Because if they get to the age 18, then they would have lost the chance. So I want them to have a decision on where they will stay, other than like, because some parents have decided not to bring their children here. So for me, it's up to them to make a decision where their life would be, not for me to make a decision that they should stay in Uganda or they should stay here.
Thank you very much.
But overall, it's rewarding.
Yeah.
And you are part of their life. They're there with you. And yeah, I don't regret.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Said. Another first timer, but a very beautiful first timer. Thank you very much for joining the conversation and contributing to this particular conversation. I get Sarah Nansu over to you. And as you come in, Kevin here is saying in the chat room, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I think we need kids to have both sides of the world. My son doesn't want to go back, yet my daughter enjoyed and loved to stay there. So they should have an opportunity to have a look at both sides and then make their own minds up. Ajat Sarah, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the conversation. The program is Come, Let's Talk with me, Kassim, Kayira.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Good to have you on. Yes, you are parenting.
Sorry, I can't put on my video because other people are having dinner here.
Oh, right. Okay.
Wow. I'll share my personal experience, and I like both. Both worlds. The kids be living in Uganda and sharing some experience here in the UK, or vice versa. But my experience overall was not a very good experience. I did send my kids to Uganda at age 11 when they went into high school, and they went to Cambodia, which I think that is where the mistake began. Because in Cambodia, I didn't benefit anything. It was like taking somebody from one hellfire to another. Literally, that's how I would describe it.
Why was that? Why was that? Is that the behavior?
Well, the children did not earn the discipline I wanted them to earn. They did not learn even the language. So you take them from here, you expect they spent 5 years there, thinking by the time they come back here, they could speak English, Luganda. They did not learn Quran. And these are choices, okay, I made a bad choice. And this is why I say my experience was bad. So if one was to take children to Uganda, you really need to have a tick box of what is it you want to achieve out of that exchange. My situation, one of the previous speakers talked of family really taking your money, being parasitic on you, taking advantage. That is beside not getting what I wanted. My experience was even bad. I paid fees. After 4 years, I visited the school, and the headmaster put me on the side to say, you owe us fees for 4 years, which was millions and millions. I'd been paying fees you could imagine if I'm living in England at my status, and I'm paying fees for my children and fees for the host family. But they chose not to pay fees for my children. And after 4 years, I had a very big debt to pay. So that was a very bad experience for me. And I concurred with the lady who talked about that.
So was that over trusting on your part that you would not even check? Like, would they not send like bank slips as confirmation of payment?
No, that is exactly the trust. Because if, say, for example, you have a sister, Kassim, at what point are you gonna say to your sister, oh, can I have pay slips? What for? What do you need the pay slips for? You've paid the fees, and your children go to school. Somebody said, I don't believe her story. I'm not one person who will be lying. You need to believe me, I'm on radio, okay? And exactly that is exactly what happened. The head teacher at the time was Mr. Nsubuga, who we all know. The reason he did not chase my children out of school, one, he just didn't believe that my family, the Chibilige family, cannot afford to pay fees. He just thought we are taking advantage because he's part of our family. That is one. That's how it went undetected. Okay. The second bit was my child, one of them, experienced a lot of bullying. And what your son Kassim has said, every time you were leaving, there were tears. My son used to cry, and I thought he's just being spoiled. I did not listen to him. But guess what? What happened? He had a mental breakdown. I'm sharing this on radio. He properly had a proper mental breakdown, which took me years and years to address. That is how bad my experience was. If none of you know my son had to suffer through that. And I had to explain when he came back here, I had to explain to the authorities the situation, how I took him away from where he belongs in UK to the long years of suffering in Uganda. And then they started therapy until it took another 2+ years for him to settle while his sibling was doing well. This experience I'm sharing is for you guys. One, you need to monitor, you need to understand the kind of child you have. Some children can cope, others don't cope. Two, you need to be listening to your child. If your child tells you, I'm not happy, I ignored that. And I nearly paid the consequences. Those of you who attended Zoom on Saturday, we talked of how children commit suicide.
Yeah.
I'm one lucky parent, my child did not. But he reminded me as he was suffering with mental health, he kept on reminding me, Mom, I used to tell you, Mom, I used to tell you. And I cried tears.
Yeah.
Right. This radio is here. This is not a conversation. If you don't know that Sarah in her own personal life, you wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
But I did experience that, and the consequences did bite, and sometimes they still come back on. Because once somebody breaks down, they become vulnerable and very delicate, even if they build their lives back on. So those of you who still have young children, to take to Uganda, I'm sharing my experience.
No, Hajat, your line is dropped off. All right.
Lying. And I actually been offended by somebody who says, I don't believe her.
Well, Hajat Sarah, I'm sure being part of this conversation, you always know everything is really up for discussion, but we do it decently. And I think it was to Brother Soed. Soed, we are always sensitive to how people, share. We would not expect someone to come here and lie. You can have your own view about a particular situation, but to say that someone...
That's right. So literally, that is my experience. And
so how did you overcome that? I think it would be interesting because it's two questions for you.
Well, I wouldn't say that I did overcome it, apart from it was too late for me, because I'd say I did hold on. People kept on, first of all, I did wait until they finished their senior 4 for them to come back. When they went, when they were 11, they came back when they were 17, right? I'm talking of, those of you know, I have a set of twins. So I did wait. I kept them in Uganda for the 5 years. And I thought this is best for them. But I nearly lost them. It was best for me, while it was easier for me to work without children and making money. And then I sent money, and then I ended up paying a debt. Then I ended up having, psychological issues to deal with, and then somebody's life to build back on. Alhamdulillah, he's built his life back. He's a gentleman, but he's one child who actually, at some point later on the radio, he may be happy to share his experience. Because now every time my child hears somebody saying, I'm taking a child to Uganda, he actually goes on his knees and begs the parent to say, please don't, because his experience was that bad. He will beg.
So Hajat, if you had to do it again, if you had to send child again to Uganda, what would you do differently now?
Well, if I was to do it again, I would always go, I would not take my child. First of all, like I said, I will always need to understand, treat each child different. You need, first of all, to understand your child. And you need to listen to your children. And if I was to go to Uganda and take them to Uganda, I will go and be with them to make sure they are settled, which I did not do. I packed them up like they are going for summer holiday. And because I didn't prepare them to say, you are going, you're not coming back. And at the end of the summer holiday, I told them, you're not coming back, you're going to boarding school in Uganda. That itself alone had its psychological effects.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Right. It had its own psychological effect. But nevertheless, the only thing that, like I said, each child is different. The other children, really, some of them love going to Uganda. And though they don't think of making a life there, though they will never, from the experience that I had, I'm sure they will never depart from their children. They will always stick with their children. What I did was like, I negated them. And that message keeps on coming back. Mom, you left us to work for the community. Alhamdulillah, we are here now. They are now professionals. They are adults.
Fantastic. Hajat Sarah, thank you very much for sharing.
Their experience was really bad experience. So was my experience. In terms of the fees itself.
Oh, sorry, go
no,
on.
so sorry. Because I'm using a phone, somebody keeps on interrupting with my phone. You know, so it's not just about finance, but I keep on saying that it goes back to you understand the strength of your child. If your child says, I cannot cope no more, please listen. And if you can't bring them back, go and be there with them. That is listening and support them. For me, you've asked me what would I have done better? I would listen better and I will be there for them. If it means leaving a job, the best investment is your child when they are still young, not when they are.
Thank you very much, Hajat Sarah. And it looks like you've really touched so many hearts. So many hands are coming up. At 9:15 p.m. in the United Kingdom, the one says, God blesses us with children for reasons. And if it's not for unbearable circumstances, I'm so against sending children away, not even sleepovers, until they can make informed decisions. 18 years and over. Well, Sophia Murango, I come to you, and then I'll come to Abu Mariam, who was a teacher actually at Kaboja. I think that I could have brought him much faster when this is still fresh. But Sophia, your hand was up and fast, and therefore it's only natural that I should come to you, and then I'll come to Abu Mariam, Faibulule, and then Tenat. Yes, Sophia. Assalamu alaikum. We're getting quite hot here now. It looks like
it's about parenting, isn't it?
Yes.
So I'm asking myself, do we think better parenting is in Uganda or you being with your child? It depends how you're going to deal with your situation. The people we are sending our children to, they're not their parents. Like your mother looked after you or your father. Now you have to take this burden. It's like a burden, your children. If you're not going to take them to a boarding school, for your mother to look after them. I grew up with my grandmother. This is the situation I'm telling you right now here. I grew up with my grandmother because my mom was too young to look after me. I was taken back in the village. But had I had a decision in that, I wouldn't have, my grandmother she loved me so much. But it's better when you're close to your parents. I have my one son at the moment. And for sure, I don't think I can take him and abandon him and take him to my mother because she's looked after me or she looked after me. I don't want to give up and say, now you're going to look after my child. That's why in UK, they do flexible hours. Nobody send us money, you know. God didn't send me and tell me, go and work 24/7. So what I decided, I do the shifts that suit my hours and my son. Even right now, I'm a nurse, but I work until 3. At times, the latest I finish when it's too late is 5:30 because I work in a clinic. Yeah. So if I can do that and I stay with my child, I give him my love. We talk, we chat because right now I'm a single parent. But sometimes we feel like when we come here in UK, we have to work 24/7. We don't have time for our children. These children grow so fast, you know. Everyone who has a child here, you should know that by the time you start going back, if they're 20s and this, you don't even spend time with them. That time is gone and it's never recovered. But people are thinking that we should send them home, and some are using it as a punishment. Home is not a punishment. It's a good place where we learn everything because that's where we all came from.
So, Sophia, your style of parenting has been one where you try to tune your work to match your schedule. Yes. So available.
Exactly.
That's not something that is easy to attain for everyone, especially considering.
Yes, I understand it's not easy, but we have parents who are like, they're not even single. Okay, they're married. You can tailor your work with your children's life. Like you, Mr. Kassim Kayira, with your wife, are you going to do full-time? Both of you, are you going to be doing nights? No, you can decide someone will be looking after the kids during the day and the other person can be there during night. But some of our BEM culture group, we tend to work. Parent is going night, mother is going night, so the children are left on their own. I know we want to do something back home, but when these children end up in prison or end up stabbing somebody or something, they end up in St. George's, you never regret this. Let's not use Kampala or Uganda as a punishment. And it's better we look after our children, because when you look after your kid, you will know their behavior, you know what is happening with them. Because out there in Uganda or here anywhere, there are people who can abuse your children, trust me. And our kids are truly vulnerable and they won't come to tell you because they're so terrified. And by the time you get to know about this, it's too late. Like Hajat has said, she was used as a bank. We turn to be Barclays Bank or Nationwide. They will just milk your money. So that's my say. Assalamu alaikum wa
Wa
rahmatullahi.
alaikum salam. Very heated say as well, I can hear. Abu Mariam, you are a teacher at Kawoja, the school that was in question. I don't think we are really coming in to talk about the school, because the school in the circumstances actually did what it could do. I mean, allowing, they respected Hajati's family, and therefore probably it was in that context that 4 years lapsed and they were hoping that the money would come. But probably the tradition within the school, you were a teacher there, probably you might not speak for the school for that matter, but at least you can share an experience in terms of the kind of environment that was there.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Doctor, I'm so happy to hear from you and members of the group. Alhamdulillah. Rabbil alameen wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Well, I've heard what Hajat Sarah has said. Indeed, it's very devastating that those statements have come from a parent of which one of the schools I was teaching. I don't know the years that she's talking about, but I was in Cambodia around 2005, 2006, until it closed down for about 2 years or 1.5 years, because it closed down around 2007, early 2007, that's when it closed down. So I would like to say that very unfortunate Hajat Sarah went through this and her children. It's very, very unfortunate. However, Mr. Kayira, however, we used to have some students who used to come from the UK and the US, like I said last time.
Yes.
And they used to go through a process. We had kids who would come with a lot of bad behaviors, but they used to go through a process. And after some time, alhamdulillah, I will be a witness. They grew up into understanding students, into understanding. You can never believe this, but into understanding students. Why? Number one, this is what parents, I think this is what Hajat Sarah missed. Bambi, I'm so sorry. That's what she said. She did not, she wasn't available, number one. And she gave the kids to wrong people to take care of them. That is number two. And she did not maybe follow up. Because this is what some parents used to do. They used to bring their kids to us. Nevankwa so mwananti, Mr. Pendo, ono mwana mukukwasiza. You understand, in that kind of way. And then she even went ahead to pay me to take care of the kid and make sure Musome Solwalabu, Musome Sachino, Mpisa, this and that, Musome Soluganda. And every day the kid would come in the evening. If I give him an assignment, he comes, have this and that. So some parents missed this, Bambi. So many parents missed this. They would just bring the kids, leave them in school, think that the school will take good care of them, and boom, everything gets lost in the question. So this was a very big problem. I know some parents who were disappointed. That is very true. And I know some parents who were happy. I'll give you an example of a young boy. I've forgotten his name. He came from the UK, but by the time he came, oh my God, Yaliasiva balance, what they call balance. In Pali comedy one see. The trousers would go as far as in Tumbwe. But we just kept quiet. We took him slowly. You know, he used to come with his hair was Envilizabalas, you know, something like that. And this is what we did for that young boy. The young boy, after some time, he shaped himself without anyone touching him, because he had guidance from one of the teachers. No one touched him. He shaped himself. We even gave him prefecthood. He became a timekeeper. Twagenda okukomekereza ng'omwana empala gisibira waggulu, enviiri yazisalako ye kennyini without anyone telling him to take off his hair. He took off his hair by himself. You can imagine. And he became a very shaped, well person. He would come to class early on time, leave class on time, go to bed, and we mentored him very well. So the problem with some parents, what they used to do, baletanga abaana ne babasuulawo, and the guardians would never check on their kids at all. Some guardians, subhanallah, is so disappointing.
They
Some
just
guardians
on visitation.
Yes,
days.
on visitation. They even don't ask visitations. How's the performance of the boy I brought or the girl I brought? They wouldn't care. But
Abu Mariam, would there be an issue as well of parents who have failed in their parenting here in the diaspora, and then they dump these children to the schools to try to take care of?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, there are so many of them who have failed in diaspora, and they dump them in schools in Uganda without following up. That is the biggest mistake they make. They don't follow up. Baba kwasaba judge go kwasizo mwana. The judges, judges, these are not school people. These are people who want to take kids to the village and live in the village. They don't know they know nothing about education. So that is the biggest problem. But we teachers, we would make sure at least we handle kids about kwasiza. I used to have a young boy, Yava, I think it was Sweden, Namulabida bulungi, and the parents were appreciative. He was calm, he was a good boy, Namulabida bulungi, he even spoke Luganda after when he left school. So that was the biggest challenge. Okukwasa abantu abatalina buvunaanyizibwa, our children. But the best thing to do is to be with your kid. Nomulabira bulungi nnyo, and you follow up on everything. If anything happens, you blame yourself, not blaming anyone. But however, even here, no one abana bannange tusobola bakulizawo bulungi. How do you speak to them? Well, the government might say, Omana yasinga, because Bazungu, what they do for them, they make sure the kid has an upper hand. But we as parents, we have the choice, because we stay with them in our houses, we have the choice to make sure they become better students. Why? Because at the end of the day. So some of us fear the government. Government stuff like that. But as long as you understand that the kid is yours, Allah, make sure you have faith in God. Some parents are very weak, and that is a very big problem. So Hajat Sarah Bambi, it's very unfortunate. Simomani, I don't know her kids. I wish I could know some of the kids. I wish I could know her kids. But it's very unfortunate that some kids, that's what happened. It is very
Abu Mariam, thank you very much. It's 26 minutes past 9 o'clock. Hands and the conversation is getting more and more interesting. I cannot thank you enough for being part of the conversation. My hand was going next to Janat, but I've managed to get another young person who went to Uganda. My daughter, we got now we get to Cal just to hear their own experience, because I think then I'll come to Janat Jingo and come to Saidi. More hands coming up, chat room is up. Someone says in a day school than in the school. Yes, I'll ask Nakato, do you want to come on, please? If you can unmute yourself and come on, we'll share your experience. What is school? Because that's the parenting. I don't know why there has been a tendency to move towards Uganda for some reason, or rather going back to Africa, being taken back to Africa. Yet the parenting is here now, but I think it would be good to sort of share the sides. Nakato, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm fine.
Thank you very much for joining the conversation. You've been listening into the conversation. First of all, let me hear what have you made of what you have heard so far? You've been listening.
In my opinion, I think because I was listening to the two different sides, and obviously some people were saying that. Obviously there was that one woman that was saying that you need to know your child and sending them, which I 100% agree. Because some people, they're going to come back and say, oh, I enjoyed it, I loved it, this and this, but others won't have the exact same experience. And I think people that like, I don't know, people that come back with like really good results, like their child is like really well disciplined and this and this. It's never by like choice. Like the things that go on in boarding school, the way that we are like taught to do things, it's like by force. Like we will get beaten if we don't act a certain way. We have some sort of routine. And like, yeah, you come back with like, you know, manners and some sort of like, you know, goodness, and you've got some Quran in there, that's all good. Then you also left with like the memories and like, you know, everything that happened in boarding school.
So when you talk about memories, what sort of memories are you talking about? What are you thinking? Are you referring to?
Well, for me personally, bad memories, because like that's basically all it was. It was just some sort of like discipline thing to kind of like see how they could like, how good they can make you to send you back to your parents. Do you know what I mean? And they're gonna do anything to make that. They will beat you. They will have these rules. Do you know what I mean? And different people had different experiences. But what I noticed more that wasn't exactly talked about, like not a lot of people talk about it with children that go to boarding schools, but bullying is definitely there. Like
Sarah did talk about the bullying that could happen. But you had brothers to protect you. Would that not come in handy at all? Or you were too young to?
Sorry, what did you say?
I'm saying you had two brothers to protect you, but they not there.
Yeah, me, I didn't get bullied. No, it wasn't like yeah, bad things happened to me, but I wouldn't say I was bullied in boarding school. But you can see the treatment of other people in boarding school. And it's not like, as someone that's kind of just like on the outside, there's not really much you can do. And there's not the people that get bullied, they don't get offered like help. Do you know what I mean? Like help that's needed. So yeah.
Is that help from the schools or from the parents themselves? When they come to visit, is there anything that you think parents can probably start addressing when they come, for example, for station day? Is there something that probably children can open up to their parents, and then parents can do something about it?
Well, I mean, kind of asking about it like straightforward isn't the way to go, because most children wouldn't just admit, yeah, I'm being bullied. Do you know what I mean? But it's the sort of thing where I think when like you visit, sort of try and like connect first, kind of like get them like feeling okay, safe, this and this, and then sort of like imply the question but not ask. Like be like, oh, how is it here? You know, friends, what's going on? Anything bothering you? And then that's like an easier way for the child to open up about it. Yeah.
So looking at your own experience now and looking back, looking where you are at now with the kind of education that you're going through now, are there any lessons that you think are good that you took from there, good experiences that you think you got from there that you applied within your study environment here?
Probably routine. Here, like, yeah, you just have to be, I don't know how to describe it. Here, you kind of have to like put it like in yourself to have a routine. Like it's hard to start a routine by yourself. But obviously in Uganda, they sort of just like every day, it was every day. So it was like, what's the word? We did it more often. So I think there was that routine, but here, not so much, if that makes sense.
It does. All right, thank you very much. So if you had any message to a parent who would like to send their children to Africa, for example, would you advise them to, having listened to what you've had, but also your own experience?
Not boarding, maybe a day school. If you really think the school's like really good, then yeah, like have them daytime. But boarding, no. If they're enjoying it and they're getting well, then maybe you can consider boarding school, but not straight away.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Ilham, for your time and sharing your experiences. Well, the program is Come Let's Talk with me, Kassim Kayira, the only program where probably you have parents talking to children and children speaking with parents. Conversation tonight is about parenting in the diaspora and the challenges and the opportunities available. Janat, I'm coming to you. Then I'll go to Ojapam. Swaibule, I'm just pushing you to the other desk because you've had a chance to speak so we can have more people coming in. 27 minutes to the end of the program. Very interesting conversation so far. Thank you if you've been part of the conversation. The chat room seems to have gone quiet. I'm sure everybody's sort of trying to digest what we are talking about. Janat Jingo, assalamu alaikum and welcome. Welcome.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I can hear you.
Thank you so much for this very important topic.
Thank you.
It was really very heartbreaking for me to hear Hajat Sarah's story because she's my sister-in-law and I know her children very well, especially when they were young. So, I got to meet them in Uganda, but I did not know that all of that was happening. So it is heartbreaking, Hajat, but I'm glad that they are settling in very well. And I kind of like Zena also brought her experience and I can relate with that because I'm a parent who's, I'm a child whose parents were abroad. For the first 13 years of my life, I think I saw my father only 4 times. So, but I remember I grew up in the 80s and those were the days of postcards and occasional phone calls. The one thing that affected me not having my parents around was loneliness. But looking back, it wasn't a very bad experience for me because, my father really tried to call me and the postcards and all of that. So my stand would be having a middle ground. I wouldn't want to see people saying, no, I cannot take my children to Uganda, or people saying that, because if you say you cannot take them, there's something that they can miss, with their culture, especially. Children need to have a sense of belonging, I think. They really need to have a sense of belonging. And I'm seeing it with adult children here in America that haven't had that chance to go to Uganda. They are really out there. And before you know it, they miss that culture, something good about our culture. And then taking them when they are like leaving them in Uganda, you really have to be sure who you're leaving your children with. Because if you take them to Uganda, as someone mentioned, like a punishment, they can really have resentment. But we have to realize there are parents who are actually abroad, but they can't even bring their kids out of Uganda, for papers and all of that, things. There are so many different reasons. But if you have the ability to be with your parents, I think you have to take the middle ground. Let them go to Uganda, but at what age? If you decide to take them to Uganda, who are you going to give your kids to? Are you going to be involved? The judges can love the kids and all of that, but the judges are limited. The one thing I don't agree with is taking kids to local schools. For me, I have maybe a little bit of myself. I have 4 children, 3 of them are in their 20s. The 2 that I took to Uganda in a local school, it was a very bad experience. And with me, with my children, I was always there. I never took my children and gave them to anyone. I was there. But the experience in the local school, day school, was so horrible. The beating, that is something I cannot tolerate. I packed up my bags and I left 6 months later. But with my 2 younger kids, I took them mostly for Quran. And it was a very, very good experience for that. When my son did the Quran for the 1 year, 15 months that he was there, I didn't do the local route, for the reasons that I told you. Even the local schools, in high school, they don't hesitate to beat 17-year-old. But I went for an international school, which was a very good experience. And they loved the experience. What I see right now is the dean. They love the culture. They got to bond with their relatives. So those are the advantages that I see, that my taking them to Uganda. And the other thing I did when we were in Uganda, I actually tried to make them live like tourists pretty much. Because when we were ready to come back to Atlanta, they didn't want to come back because Uganda was actually a better place for them.
Much
because the kind of life they were they were living, they had people to take them to places, they were like not going to Jaja, to aunties and all of that. So they actually enjoyed that experience. The things were not as good as America, but that connection with the relatives and aunties, that was really priceless. So all in all, I'm saying that let's take the middle ground. Let's, be maybe more careful with who we give our children to. If you can take off those 2 years, That's what I did. If you
You
can
know,
take off
Janat,
those 2 years
Janat,
and say,
Janat,
okay, you
let
can
me
give up the
interject
money and
just
all of
a
that, but be with your children. I think that would be the best experience, and that is what I would advocate.
So, Janat,
But
my
yeah,
question
that is
then
my
to you.
experience. I hope, you know.
Yeah, Janat, before you go, it looks like
Yes.
for some reason, the conversation has gotten very interesting, but then it has twisted a lot towards a lot of taking back to Africa. But yet
Yes.
we are living in the West, and many of us are probably not going to be sending children to Africa. So I'd like for us to concentrate in the next remaining minutes, the 22 minutes that we have left with us, inshallah, to look at parenting in the West where we are at, because Uganda has been, sort of going to Africa, taking children to Africa has been one option. Now, let us concentrate a lot more now in these last few minutes on the upbringing, on the parenting from the perspective of where we are at, not necessarily, taking the problem, taking the issue away from where we are at, but just parenting. What sort of things have we done right from an environment here, from the perspective of where we are at, that is helping to bring up children? What sort of advice would you have, Janat, before I let you?
The advice I would have for all parents, you have to make sure you ground these children in their deen. Right now, in this day and age, we have Islamic schools, we have masjids with weekend programs, we have all of that. That is the first thing. Before I even thought about culture, my kids don't even speak Luganda. But when it came to deen, that was the number one. The number two, of course, the manners are manners. Everybody has to have manners, even if you're white, black, anybody. That is standard. You have to teach your kids how to have manners and to behave. The other thing, I really bring up my children to get into this American culture, to take advantage of what America has to offer. Because at the end of the day, my kids are American. I'm not going to sit here and say they are so Ugandan and things like that. They have that Ugandan thing, but when the dust settles, they're American, and that is how I'm raising them, like American Muslims, with that Ugandan culture. So we have to kind of like make them blend into this system. Every time you call your kids Ugandan, they'll never take advantage of this, this world. They will never know the system. So in any case, that is something that I hear people say, my kids are Ugandan, they are Ugandan. For me, I really think I raised them to be like, get into the system. Like I encourage my son, the old son, to kind of like go in the masjid, give back in the community, serve in your community, be proud of your community as an American. So I don't really get into this Ugandan thing too much.
Fantastic.
That is in a few words, that's what I'm doing,
that's
inshallah.
really, really good. And I'm sure it's opening up a whole new chapter as we get into the last 19 minutes into the show, to the end of the program. Ojapem, your hand has been up for a while. Please go ahead. American, I will get there according to Sowebi Masava. Raising the child to be as American as is possible. After all, we just raise the children. We'll need to give them the time, of course, to make their own decisions about where they want to be. Kevin says we need to give time to our kids, at least one. Kevin says we need to give time to I think fire and balance work. At least one part. Grace Ojapam. Fire and balance work. Grace Ojapam.
Assalamu alaikum, Brother Kassim. This is Jordan here. I'm just borrowing.
How is Scotland?
Scotland is very cold. I've been out looking for the northern lights, but it's been elusive. So I'm back in the comfort of.
Wait until about 10 p.m. to get the. Wait until about 10 p.m. to get the northern lights.
Yeah, so I'm back in the comfort of warm. Yes, is that clear?
Yes, it is much clearer. Yes, we are parenting.
Yes, it is much clearer. Yes, we are parenting, and
you have been a parent of.
Yes,
you have been a parent of twins, actually raising 20-year-olds in UK.
Yes. Before I come to that, I just wanted to touch a little bit on the aspect of taking children back to Uganda. Right. And in my view, people take children back to Uganda for the wrong reasons. In my view, because I took my children back to Uganda when they were 5, and they were there until they are 11. So the purpose for me to take them there was for them to learn the culture, not to learn Luganda. No, theirs was to learn the culture. I wanted my children to get an education, not to get knowledge. So what I did is, although the children were there with their mom, they had to go and live with their aunties and to attend the local schools. I know somebody has said it's not right to take children to the local school, but how else can they blend in the culture, or how else can they learn the culture if you take them to an international school? So you're taking them from an international school in the UK or in America or in Sweden, and you're taking them to another international school in a different environment. So it's not going to be any different. And when we say we are taking the children to get good manners, again, that says a lot about you, the parent, because it means the children don't have the manners, and that is the responsibility of them. They don't have good manners, sorry, they don't have good manners, and that's the failure of the parents. Now, you have instilled into the children, or you've encouraged them to grow up with bad manners, and then you expect a total stranger to put them right after you have failed or you have bent them altogether. So to me, getting an education is not relocating the child to do what they would have done here anyway. Now, coming back to the question of education in the UK, what we have done, or what we found helpful, is to allow the children to be or to develop into what they want to develop. Because again, I'll keep touching on Uganda. Another reason I took the children to Uganda was to learn the deen, but they didn't learn any deen there. They were so engrossed to the culture, and they came and learned the deen here in Newcastle. So the aim was for them to get everything there, but that's too much for a child, because remember, they are growing up. You are taking them into an environment which is very different from one that they are used. So there'll be a lot of things going around in their mind, and learning some of those things that you want them to learn is not going to be their priority. So in my view, giving the child the opportunity to develop into who they wish to be, because their life is their life.
So Mr.
They
Jadin,
chart their own
Mr. Jadin, you're trying to say, as parents, we facilitate the process. What they want to become. We are not actually sort of determining what
you give them, no, you give them opportunities to develop into what they can develop into. Because I tried this when my children were 1 year before sitting for the O levels, the GCSEs. Because they are twins, I was saying, no, one of you has got to be a doctor, and the other has to be an engineer, and that failed because they just put the wall between me and their learning. So I said, that's fine. You don't want to be what I want you to be, which is right. So I gave them the opportunity to be what they want to be. So they selected the subjects which they thought was good, and I simply guided them, and that is paid very well for us, because it was their interest, it was their targets, and they have worked hard towards that. They're not working hard to please me, because I was out of the question. I was just the role model, giving them the opportunity to develop into what they wanted. So the thesis that we put into them, is said, okay, you've chosen this career path. It's up to you to see it succeed. We'll give you the tools. We'll take you to the schools, we'll buy you the books, but it's up to you to motivate yourself to be what you want. And if you fail, then you'll have yourself to blame. So they got motivated, and alhamdulillah, they are doing what they wished or wanted to do. Fantastic. So most parents dictate to their children to become what the parents want. Because I wanted to be a pilot, and I wanted one of my daughters to be an aeronautic engineer, because I didn't go into that field. But that failed because they were not interested in that. They wanted to do something different. But because I gave them the opportunity, they have gone into that.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Continuing doing your I'll bring in Mr. Musa Kagoro, all the way in the United States of America. I've been trying to get him on. We are 13 minutes to the end of the show. Very interesting conversation.
Very interesting conversation.
Haji Musa Kagoro, are you there? Haji Musa Kagoro, are you there? iPhone says parenting knowledge and skills vary across cultures, so the decision of raising children in the UK or taking them to Uganda for education or to be raised. Just 1 second, you have echo coming from your side. No, that was from Mr. Jadens. The current speaker is spot on. Parenting knowledge and skills vary across cultures, so the decision of raising children in the UK or taking them to Uganda for education or to be raised by other than family members, friends and relatives is personal. Priorities, safety issues, and well-being have to be put into consideration. Haji Musa Kagoro, I don't know if you're there. If not, then I'll just go to Swaib. Bwana Swaib, we've been waiting there as well. Assalamu alaikum once again.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yes, please.
Thank
Do
you
you
for the
have
opportunity to speak again. But it's of course you have touched about it, but the issue here is how do we bring up children here in the UK? We have seen that many of the parents take children back to Uganda, but of course, like the previous speakers have said, it is mainly for a long reason. We should have the right reasons to take them back to Uganda, and they'll really enjoy it. The other issue is, I haven't had any experience of those who have brought children from Uganda and then settled into the UK. How have they found it? Because there are situations where children come in from Uganda and come into the UK, and it might go to both sides. It may be wrong or it may be the right choice. So what is the situation like? There are other situations where, like I've had the experience where I've seen children coming in from the UK and they have their university education back in Uganda. That could be a nice experience. They go back to Uganda, do their university education, and then come back to the UK to work as engineers, as doctors, but having had their education back in Uganda. One, it could be cheaper. Secondly, it could be very rewarding, and they come back with all that kind of experience. What is the kind of situation with regard to that? So there's so many.
If we have any members who have had that sort of experience, it would be good to hear your side of the story in terms of that, sharing that particular experience, just in terms of how that fared. Is there anyone who has had that experience where you have children, let's say, come from Uganda and then coming in to work from here, and what that experience has been so far? Would like to hear from you. The program is Come Let's Talk with me, Kassim Kayira. 10 minutes to the end of the show. A very interesting conversation, one what we're just touching bits and pieces because we cannot reach the end of, because this is just the sidelines of a very big and huge conversation. And from all the sides that we are hearing from, people come from all different sorts of backgrounds. And in that way, the upbringing is different. How have you managed to do it? How did you manage to see it through? Some have been lucky, others have had different experiences. But ultimately, I think at the end of it all, what counts really is we are able to bring up children. Some people have had nasty experiences. Zainab Bega, they start sort of giving her own personal experience of untrustable or untrusted relatives who will thrive on your being away and then thrive on sending the money which never gets to your children, and then ultimately we end up losing. But of course, that has just been part of the story. For those who decided to raise their children back here in the United Kingdom, back in the United States, elsewhere in Europe, how did you manage to do it? What sort of lessons do you think we could take? I think there are general things that we all seem to agree about, which is one, religion. Religion is very, very important. A home that is raised with a religion, with deen, you'll find that children in such an environment will be able now to learn from that and pick up pieces that become very critical in their upbringing. Two, we live by example. A lot of times we expect to see people delivering things differently when in actual sense, we are not examples of that. I think Sowendi Masaba was referring to it as sending rejects to Africa, rejects to Quran schools, because children have become so difficult. Because of their difficulty, then we decide to take them to Quran schools, and that's where we think we are doing the parenting. Many parents have taken the decision to sort of decide between the two parents, father and mother, at least one of them to be available whenever need arises, to be available for the children. But I think very important to be listening to tonight's conversation as well. It's about the children themselves, listening to them, seeing the telltale signs. There are times when they are trying to communicate to us, but then they are unable to sort of say it straightforwardly. How do you as a parent read through this kind of situation and see that there's something that needs attention. Quite often, and sometimes, actually, very often, we find that sometimes by the time we realize what is going on, it is too late. It's a painful reminder of where we need to be. Every moment you spend with your child is a moment well spent, because every moment that goes will never come back. We are aging, very soon they'll be out of the house. You can never have that moment brought back again. So counting on all these moments, I think parenting is really, probably there's no rule book that says this is what you must do. But in other words, we have to do what we can do. There are some particular basic foundations. Have religion, have discipline, have a particular routine in the home. Take charge as a parent in the home, and that actually contributes to how we end up deciding or becoming who we will become later on. Hafsa, in the United States of America, we've had a bit from people in the US, people in the UK. I'd like to get your own take. How have you managed to look after the children? You've got university-going students now.
Sheikh, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Sheikh, wallahi, I'm a work in progress. I learn something new every day. My kids range from 18 to 2 years old.
Right.
And parenting a 2-year-old is like I never parented the 18-year-old. It's like I'm learning every day. I'm learning every day. Hajat Jingo said something like, it's like we have to kind of adapt. I cannot fully be Ugandan. My older daughter the other day was telling me, Mami, watukubanye amigo, you beat us so much, it is abuse. She told me, Mommy, that was abuse. Yes. She told me, I'm going to make sure you don't do it to the young ones. And I'm like, well, looks like it shaped you pretty good. She goes, Mommy, that was abuse. And now it's like I'm relearning. I'm like, I'm only raising you the only way I know how.
Yes.
And we're like, Mommy, no. You don't have to do that for my younger siblings. So I am a work in progress as a parent. I learn something new every day. It is challenging. I remember a long time ago, my kids were playing with the phone and ended up calling 911, just playing. Ended up having like 6 cruisers outside.
Wow.
Not knowing what had happened. You don't play with 911. You call 911, that is something that there is an emergency. Something is really, really wrong. So, it is challenging being a parent.
Allah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for us. Well, let me go to another Hafsa, from a Hafsa in the US to a Hafsa in the UK. Hafsa Bireke, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello, Hafsa, are you there?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Panendi muradde.
Good to have you. Now umsijagwaze jori.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
Mungu akusaidie ya Rabbi.
Yes.
You don't want to be where I have been.
Sigaze borao.
Right. So we are talking about parenting. You brought up your daughter from here. You never sent her back to Africa. You decided to stick around and stay with her. How has that been? And you're also a teacher.
Yeah, at some point, I was tempted to take them, but it was purely for dean purposes. Yes. Because with M-Pesa, omanyi ndi mutuju. Ewange barracks, it was purely for dean nemerera, but I am not regretting. However, I'm not regretting per se. However, I would have loved still to send them back home, so that there are some things omanye katukulira mu community yenna bwetambula wano bakulaba ozunga ne bakulopa, so eyina engeri gyekufugamu e Uganda ne openness na biki nti kati wano you are at home, you're doing everything by yourself, you're teaching them this and that. There's some things you'll forget and say, oh my God, I forgot to teach them this, and time has gone, So whereas back home they would instill in them. Oman actually Nakato mentioned something. She talked about routine. Abana bano, they lack routine, and it's so annoying. The fact that we grow up routine, and we see it worked for us. It shaped us. When you struggle with them, for example, making the bed in the morning. if you're not tired of saying that, they will never make that bed. Every single day, you're not leaving unless you make that bed. You're not leaving, you know? So
Mrs.
still,
Kassim says routine and structure here, Oremwa.
okitegeera olemwa naye I think it is a catch-22. It's a catch-22. I would love to send them there, but not for long, probably 1 year, so that they can learn that bit of culture, that DINI, but anyway, it's too late now. Because probably if I took them, they'll bring themselves back without me knowing. Yeah.
The chat room says they are just rebellious, Hafsa. That's all they are. Hajar, I think maybe you are at work. I'm trying to get to you, but I can't seem to get to you. Hajar, are you there? I think it's Hajar in Southampton, all the way in Southampton. Are you there? Hafsa, thank you very much. And we just wish you a very quick recovery. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you quick recovery. We need you back on your feet and, getting working. Then I think people know those sent home, but hell, okay. Message here again from Janat Jingo says, Mr. Masaba, Mugaza, OG, and those schools are great. However, I personally prefer the international school. Yeah, that's a debate about international schools versus traditional schools. Kevin says, thanks so much for these wonderful topics that you bring to us. May Almighty Allah reward you, inshallah. Well, the only way is keep it here every Tuesday, inshallah. We come and have these conversations. You never know, you take away something. We keep learning. You just hear from these particular experiences. I prompted my children, and honestly, there's no prior discussion as to what is to be said. That's how I do with freestyle. And you see, they come on here, you don't know even what they are going to say. And then you keep learning. You sort of see in the mind of a child to try to understand what they go through. That, I think, in itself is quite something to take away. And as parents, I think we should be encouraging our children to come and participate in these conversations. You might be surprised as to how much we hear. In one of the programs we did, when I think it was sometime last year, we had a very interesting conversation between parent and son and mother. And the son spoke to the mother, sort of saying, Mom, I don't see you, I need this and this. There are almost tears on the show. And this in itself, I think, sort of breaks barriers. You might be surprised as to how much you hear from children once they think they have an open environment to be able to have a conversation. But let's open up those conversations inside our own homes and get talking. Becca Chinji, tomorrow there will be Bridging the Gap. I wonder what you are cooking for tomorrow. Becca, it's 10 o'clock already. We should be wrapping up our show tonight, inshallah. I'll have about 2 people coming on quickly. Becca probably seems a bit tied up, so once he's ready, I think I'll bring them on. I hate to have people coming on and just leaving without saying a word. I think it's kind of, Shakil, I'll bring you and then I'll go to Mutesi or Joy, one of the two, and then we'll wrap up tonight's program. Shakil, you chose to bring up your children in the UK and you don't really. How did you do it? How are you doing it?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good to have you again here.
Good to be here. This is an interesting topic. I always miss parts of it, but it's really interesting. I, for one, the reason I decided to bring up my children here is I don't feel like anyone can do a better job as a mom to my children as I do myself. I make mistakes, they make mistakes. There's no book or guide to parenting. There's no right way or wrong way. We learn along the curve. Every child is different. Every child will teach you something new, especially the firstborns will be a challenge to both, will be a challenge to them, and they'll be a challenge to us. Why? Because we are learning. No child is the same, I'm telling you. We are all born from the same mother and dad, breastfed the same breast milk, but they all develop differently. I've also learned things along the way that people have, or we didn't know about. I'm not going to say ignore, but I've ignored. I've given my children time, as you know very well, Kassim. If it means resigning on a job, I'll resign to bring up my children, to make sure they come back to a hot meal every day, to make sure I'm doing their homework with them, to give them a routine. But I've also learned about a lot about behavior issues or problems, including ASD and ADHD, which we didn't know. So these are conditions that really affect children. And if you're in denial as a parent, you're not going to help your child at all. If you study ADHD, you will find that a child with ADHD really finds difficulties. And you will never put a finger at what your child has until you really learn these things. Because they want, you will find like, omwana ono lwaki tampulira, lwaki ye abeera buli kaseera tuli ku odds naye. Naye bw'otegeera where this child is coming from, now mwenyini n'osoma conditions, different conditions n'ozitegeera. I'm not saying nti muli mu nnyumba mulimu omwana alina needs, but what I'm saying is, okay, rule that out. Otandika okulaba, how is my child going to learn from me? How best does my child learn? Okay, omukulu teyayiga bw'ati, era nga bwe nkugambye, aba firstborns babonaabona kubanga they are our guinea pigs. We don't know. Ojja kugezaako buli kimu okikole. Oyagala correcting mistakes z'ogwe ze wakola ng'omwana ng'okula. Toyagala mwana wa akole the same mistakes. Yet, kye twerabira nti no, they've got to make their own mistakes and learn through the mistakes. The only difficulty we face as parents, you don't want, it's very, very hard to witness your child make a mistake and you know it's a mistake. But sometimes they've got to go through that. I mean, being a parent and raising children is really, really a tough job. It has pain and laughter and all. And I don't think you really ever stop and say, okay, I put my hands up now. I feel I've come up with nkampanisa emikono nti abange bavuddemu bulungi. Kubanga ojja kulabamu obuntu obulumira ogambe nti omwana wange mulungi mu kino naye ate mu kiri ekirala. Abazadde abasinga Abannayuganda boogera nnyo ku baana bawano okubaddamu. But children here are raised from a very early age. Okuddamu, okweyogerako, okunnyonnyola, okudefendinga, okubuuza ebibuuzo. Lwaki kiri bwe kiti? Ate kati nga ffe enkula gye twakulamu, toddamu, tobuuza, kibadde ki, gwani, obuuza ngani, nze mukulu, gwe muto. I'm the parent, you're the child. Toddamu. Omwana n'omukuba ekigambo akimalayo mu kamwa ne bw'oba omubobbola engolo mu mutwe era nga bye byayogedde ebi byabimazeeyo. Kati I think abazadde, okay, abazadde naddala abazadde abakyalina abaana abato abakyali kuno, tulina okuyiga ogezaako okukola kinaffe okwadjustinga okusoma tusazeewo abaana tubakulize wano okitegeera. Kati ate tugenda babuzaabuza, oyagala obakulize wano ate oyagala obakuze ng'ab'e-Uganda empisa zaabwe z'e-Uganda. What exactly do you want? Bw'otunuulira abaana abamu sikyogera mu bubi muno nti nno abaana bennyini tubabuzaabuza. Tulina multicultural. Kaŋŋamba ozadde omwana oli Muganda, ozadde omwana mu Kassim, you understand exactly what I mean with this. Bade saagala kugenda nnyo mu wabweru wa Uganda naye nga nakyo nsobola okukola ki. Identity issues, exactly. Oyagala kati omwana tamanyi abehaving atya. Bw'agenda ewabali babuuza bayimiridde. Ewabajjajja bali, tofukamira omwana omulenzi omufukamiza omwana. Bw'ajja ewabajjajja, mwana gw'obuuza otya jjajjawo ng'oyimiridde. Okitegeera. So ebintu ng'ebyo naffe ffennyini abazadde ate n'ekirala omanyi abaana bo, gwe wennyini omanyi abaana bo. Ne kye beetaaga okimanyi, twebuzaabuza. Naye abaana baffe bye beetaaga tubimanyi ng'abazadde. Kati omwana wo bw'omutwala mbu omuloopera gundi. Yes, okwebuzaako si kibi n'okkuza. Ekirala ky'okubeera nti no abantu bagamba nti ffe Uganda twakula twalina emikisa twagenda mu boarding school. Boarding school ebintu ebimu tetwabiyiga naye ate ebimu twabiyiga. Okitegeera. Nti no baalinga banno olabira ku banno bimu n'oyiga. Bye tutaayiga kwe kuswankula. Ogira mu buliri olyasswawo tewali akugambako. Wano nawo ne wikijja ng'abantu abamu tebamanyi kutuuza abaana baabwe kuwamu kulya nti omwana oyo mwetengereza emirundi gy'ali ayasamye oba omwana oli bw'ati okitegeera. So I mean we have to make an effort naffe abaana baffe okubeera nga tubakuza. Nze I chose okuza abaana bange kubanga I feel like saagala muntu mulala ankulize baana bange. Njagala nze mbeekulize. It's hard, it's tough, there are tears, there is everything. Naye nga at the end of the day tusaba Allah to guiding in the best way possible.
Fantastic. What best words actually to sort of end on this very beautiful note. Isma mbadde nkusaba playing like a clip kafa akatusibula. I like whoever is on, just watch this clip. and then maybe we can have it as a takeaway tonight, inshallah. Very beautiful conversation, and actually the amount of time you give, whatever you like, give it time. Joanne, it's your first time on the show, and I had wanted so much to give you the last word as Ngapiti Gara. It looks like I can't seem to be getting you. I don't know if you're at work. Joanne, if you're able to unmute yourself, please, I could give you the last word while Isma gives us the last short clip that we'd like us to take away with, and then decide how we're going to live our lives. Okay, Isma, let's just play that clip while we're seeing if one will be there to have the last word. If not, then we'll say our goodbyes. The program is Come Let's Talk with me, Kassim Kayira, and it's nearly 10 minutes past 10 o'clock.
Love you guys. Have a good day at school. Bye-bye. I did not wake them up. I did not get their breakfast ready for them. I did not get them dressed. I did not do their laundry. I did not say a single word about anything that they needed to do in the morning. I did not tell them to do their homework last night. I did not yell at them that they were going to miss the bus. I did not find their shoes for them. I did not get the bowl and the cereal and the milk out for them. I did not look at the clock or tell them what time it was. Does this mean I'm a terrible parent? Wouldn't a good parent be rescuing their kids and telling them all the time what time it was? Making sure they got out of bed, making sure that they got their cereal and their breakfast down in front of them, making sure that they had clean clothes to wear. I used to parent that way, and it wasn't good for my kids, and it wasn't good for me. The hardest part of parenting is not rescuing your kids constantly. If you do everything for them and you don't allow them to have any responsibilities, they will never become responsible. My kids get themselves ready in the morning. They get to the bus on their own. They do their own laundry. They get themselves ready because these things are their responsibility, and they understand that these things are their responsibility. And that is stressful for me. At least it was at first. But now that my kids know it's their responsibility, they do it and they don't complain about it. That they just know that it's their responsibility to get up in the morning and get ready. They find their own shoes. And if they were to come to me and say, all my clothes are dirty, I don't have any clothes left, I would ask, well, why haven't you been doing your laundry? And then they realize, oh, it's their responsibility. This happened a few times at first, and now they do their laundry. And if they were to miss the bus and they needed me to give them a ride, that would cost them some money. They'd need to do chores to earn that. And that would only happen once. Still waiting for that to happen. You're not doing your kids favors by preventing them from experiencing natural consequences. Mourn with them. If something bad happens, say, I'm so sorry that happened. That's so sad that you didn't do your laundry. But keep the ball in their court. Keep it as their responsibility. Parenting is hard enough as it is without you taking all of their responsibilities on yourself. And you're not doing them any favors. You're going to end up having a teenager that doesn't know how to wake up to their own alarm, get themselves ready, and to school in time. That's going to turn into an adult that doesn't know how to get themselves up in the morning and get to their job on time. Even my 5-year-old can get up and get herself dressed, get herself breakfast, and be ready for the bus on time. Your kids are smarter and more capable than you think that they are. It's just that they think that these things are your responsibility, and so they don't worry about them.
Well, what a good way to end. And Mariam says, MashaAllah, thanks so much, Mr. Kayira. May Allah bless you and everyone who was on the Zoom panel tonight. I can only say thank you very much. Let's meet next week for another very interesting program. The program was Come Let's Talk with me, Kassim Kayira, live on 75 W Radio, live on Ummah Connected on YouTube, on Zoom, and on Facebook. It's been very nice having you. Hope to see you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and have a very good night.